And also, we learned the Cubism, and the most famous artist of Cubism is Pablo Picasso. All right, and also we saw Dadaism with the Marcel Duchamp. And again, Marcel Duchamp created the ready-made art style like this. And today, we're gonna see the rest of the two art movement after avant-garde, surrealism and idealism. So, so the surrealism was formulated in Paris in the 1920s. Like Dada, surrealism was not a style, but a way of life. Fascinated by the theories of the psychologist Sigmund Freud, who was then setting out his revolutionary ideas in Vienna. The surrealists appreciated the power of dreams, the mysterious of the unconscious, and the lure of the bizarre, and the irrational, and the incongruous, and the marvelous. So I will show you two surrealist artists to understand their concept of art. So this is the first artist, Salvador Dali. He was a skilled draftsman, best known for striking and bizarre images in his work. His painterly skills are often attributed to the influence of the Renaissance masters. So which means his painting technique is just reached the observational skills, but the theme is different with the representational work of art. So like this. So this is Persistence of Memory. The painting is 1931 by Dali and one of the most recognizable works of surrealism. So, so everyone look at this painting closer. What can you see in this painting?
That the clocks are being melted?
Yes, the clocks is melted. Yes. How do you think about the melting clocks? It's irregular, right?
It seems like there's a lot of detail up front, but towards the back, it just kind of like fades out.
Oh, yeah. To make a natural distance to create the implied space. Yes. Then how about the feeling from this painting?
Like time is running out.
Oh, time is running out. Oh, I love that. Yeah. So this painting is about the artist, unconscious, dreamlike images. So the iconography may refer to a dream that Dali himself had experienced, and that the clocks may symbolize the passing of time as one experiences it in sleep, or persistence of time in the eyes of the dreamer. And here is the orange clock at the bottom left of the painting. It is covered in ants. These black things are ants. The ants, a common theme in Dali's work, represent decay, particularly when they attack a gold watch and they seem grotesquely organic. And here, can you guess what it is? This white creature?
It looks like a horse, but not really.
Oh, yeah, maybe. What else?
A goose.
A goose. Oh, yeah, maybe.
Or maybe a goose. I'm gonna stick with goose.
Yeah, so this monstrous flash creature dragged across the painting's center is at once alien and familiar. So an approximation of Dali's own face in profile. This is the artist's face. And its long eyelashes seem disturbingly insect-like or even sexual, as does what may or may not be tongue oozing from its nose, like a fat snail. So, so I'm gonna share a video to see this painting in detail.
That and Starry Night by Van Gogh are the two stars. And I thought it would be
Let me just open this video from the beginning.
at the Museum of Modern Art. There's this tiny painting by Salvador Dali, which is the painting that everybody wants to see. That and Starry Night by Van Gogh are the two stars. And I thought it would be really interesting to talk about why this painting is so wildly popular. So this is The Persistence of Memory by Salvador Dali.
And here, I understand why people kind of connect to it now. I mean, anybody who's ever tried to make an album for a rock band is inspired by Salvador Dali. There's also this kind of fun of what are you looking at? He's really playing with reality. It's kind of like a visual brain teaser.
Is that it? Is it so popular? Is it on album cover art because it's this attack on the rational, and that's such a seductive idea?
Yeah, it's mind trippy. I like the way you phrase it. It's an attack on the rational. I mean, I guess there might be more to it. That's my sense.
You were talking about album cover art and posters on, maybe a dorm room. And what's interesting is that these artists took these ideas really seriously. This was surrealism. This was painted in 1931. Dali, this Spanish artist, this Catalan artist, had just come to Paris and had joined the surrealist group.
I'm assuming he's considered significant because he was the first person to essentially do dreamscapes and these, as you mentioned, attack on the rational.
When you walk into this painting visually, you enter into this really deep, open, and lonely space. And it's this really quiet image.
Yeah, it's kind of this desert scape, ignoring the melting clocks for a moment. You feel that, okay, if you were in this landscape, yes, time really does not really carry a lot of weight. You could just kind of wither there and die and no one would care. Even that kind of water in the background, there's no waves in it. It's like they've had time to settle down. There's literally no activity.
There's this unbearable sense of quiet. There is almost no movement. And I think it does feel very desert-like, very hot. Literally, time has melted, right? But we have this absurd environment. We do have this very naturalistic rendering, but the things that are being rendered are not naturalistic at all. And you mentioned the dead tree on the left, but it's growing out of something that seems clearly man-made or at least geometric, a tabletop perhaps. You have ants that seem to be eating and attracted to a piece of metal as opposed to a piece of rotted flesh.
Oh, that's what that is. I couldn't fully make it out. Okay, so they're eating away at a timepiece. That's fascinating.
And of course, you have the drooping clocks. And that's such an interesting and evocative idea because time is something that is so regimented. Time is something that rules us, that is so associated with the industrial culture that we live in. And here, it responds to the environment as we respond to the environment.
Well, one, you have that tabletop, and there's another one in the background. And even the way that the light is set up, especially at that cliff, it looks like it's sunset. So it's kind of like, hey, just another day has passed. Who cares?
Now, there are some identifiable things. I mean, for all of the absurdity and for all of the impossibility of what we're seeing, there are some things that our historians have recognized. The cliffs in the back are, we think, the cliffs of the Catalonian coast in northern Spain, where Dali is from. And so this is his childhood, perhaps. Some art historians have concluded that that strange figure, almost a profile face, can you just make out an eye with extremely long lashes and perhaps a tongue under the nose?
This is the whole optical illusion part of Dali. Yeah, I thought it was like a blanket, but now I completely see it, the eyelashes. I thought it was a duck for a second too. I see the eyelashes and the top of the nose.
Yeah, Dali does that funny thing where one object can actually be several things at once, sometimes really convincingly. Some art historians think this is his face, but elusive and very much a kind of dream.
I mean, that goes back to the category of this is more of that kind of door move, optical illusion type art.
Well, that's right. Surrealism posited that the rational world that we have so much faith in was perhaps not worthy of all of that faith, that the irrational was just as important, but was something that we had sublimated, something that we had tried to drive out of our life. And the way that these artists and writers thought about it was if only they could retrieve the world of the dream. Some of the artists had read Freud, some of them had only heard sort of secondhand accounts of Freud. But the idea that the dream was a place where the irrational mind came to the fore unrestricted.
This is something that I guess often confronts me is even the notions that how we perceive what we think as objective reality is really based on how our brain is wired. We see these causes and effects. We see linear time. This is how humans are wired. I mean, I think that's what's fun about these type of things. It kind of said, well, you know, look, there's different forms of reality, and who are we as creatures that are wired one particular way to be all that judgmental about what's real?
When people have looked at this painting, they have sometimes, and I think unconvincingly, tried to link it to Einstein's earlier ideas of the
Time dilation and
exactly. And the time was not, in fact, a strict thing. But I think there's more evidence that Dali is thinking about ideas of a philosopher whose name is Bergson, who thought about time as something that was not simply what struck on a clock, but that there was a kind of human time that was more subjective and that expanded and contracted according to our experience.
time is this thing that sometimes scares us because we completely don't understand it, even though it's kind of the most fundamental component of our existence. We fundamentally don't understand it, and we try to measure it out. We try to constrain it, define it in some way that makes sense to us. Actually, I think that's what this piece is maybe trying to do, is that like these clocks are stupid. These are just our futile attempts to try to label. It's kind of like if you label something or if you measure something, you feel like you actually understand it, even though you don't.
I think this is that moment when all those safe ideas of objectivity are being blown out of the water. And we're seeing an art that is, in some really interesting ways, confronting that.
All right. So how do you think about that, Dali's painting?
It seems completely different now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's more questions that left me rather than answered.
Yeah. Very interesting work of art. Yep. All right. So let's see another surrealist artist, Rene Magritte. So Rene Magritte was a Belgian surrealist artist, and he became well known for creating several witty and thought-provoking images, often depicting ordinary objects in an unusual context. His work is known for challenging observers' preconditioned perceptions of reality. So this is his work. How do you think? What you can see in this painting?
It seems like the placement of the people in the suits seem random, but I feel like there's a pattern to it.
Oh yes, it looks like a pattern. Yes, but it's slightly different with the patterns because we can feel there is a space in it, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the further back, it's more, it's like it's able to be seen, but the closer it is, it's like kind of, it seems like random.
Yes, very good notification. Yes.
It's raining men.
Raining man, yes. It looks like a Raining Man, exactly. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So actually, the piece depicts a scene of Raining Man. Yes. So nearly identical to each other, dressed in dark overcoats and bowler hats. So who seem to be either falling down like the raindrops, or floating up like a helium balloons, or just stationed in midair as no movement or motion is implied. So the backdrop features red roofs, buildings, and mostly the blue, cloudy sky, lending credence to the theory that the men are not raining. So it seems like very interesting image. So like this, most of surrealist artists are dealing with unusual context in their work of art. It's like a dreamlike. And this image looks very interesting. So many of the surrealist artists interested in masks, disguises, and what lies beyond or beneath visual surfaces, like this Rene Magritte's painting. So the surrealism offered a personal solution to life during the years following the trauma of World War I. But in the view of many artists, society and possibly even human nature itself had to be transformed so that such a horror would not happen again. That art could play a central role in bringing about a better society was a 19th century idea, yet it found a renewed application after World War I in a collective approach. So in the arts, the idealism encourages imagination and attempts to realize a mental conception of beauty, a standard of perfection, juxtaposed to aesthetic naturalism and realism. The artist of this title, which is a group of artists, reduced the art to essential geometric shapes and primary colors, just like this, believing that these were universal understood visual language. The most famous artist associated with this title was this artist, Piet Mondrian. So Piet Mondrian is a Dutch painter, and he is known for being one of the pioneers of 20th century abstract art, as he changed his artistic direction from figurative painting to an increasingly abstract style until he reached a point where his artistic vocabulary was reduced to simple geometric elements. Mondrian's art was highly utopian and was concerned with a search for universal values and aesthetics. So this is Mondrian's painting. As the years progressed, lines began to take precedence over forms in Mondrian's paintings. In the 1930s, he began to use thinner lines and double lines. These are thinner lines, and this one also the double lines more frequently, punctuated with a few small colored forms, if any at all. So double lines particularly excited Mondrian, for he believed that offered his painting a new dynamism, which was eager to explore. So I'm going to share one more video to see his work in detail.
These bold colors and grids are the hallmark of artist Piet Mondrian. But the same artist, still known today for his instantly recognizable patterns, started out painting these. This summer, an exhibit at the Gemeente Museum in The Hague traces Mondrian's path from that to this. Benno Temple, the museum's director, explains.
So in the Netherlands, there has always been a very strong tradition in landscape painting, dating back from the 17th century. And it was almost a golden rule. The horizon was low, so you had 1/3 of the painting being a landscape and 2/3 of the painting being sky with the famous Dutch clouds.
But even in his early career, Mondrian is ready to break the rules.
He has this early painting around 1900, a ditch by a farm, a landscape with the horizon very high, so there's almost no sky. And there is a tree standing in the foreground of the painting, dividing the painting into, you could almost say, squares and lines.
In 1911, Mondrian moves to Paris, where the Cubist painters Georges Braque and Pablo Picasso influenced Mondrian to experiment with increasingly abstract styles. In 1915, Mondrian returns to the Netherlands and joins the Lauren Artist Colony, where he befriends two artists who push him even further toward abstraction. Together, these three participate in the founding of the De Stijl movement. Like many artistic movements at the time, this group tried to make a definite break from the past. No more Dutch clouds and windmills for these guys. Mondrian calls his style at this time neoplasticism. Mondrian writes,
"This new plastic idea will ignore the particulars of appearance. On the contrary, it should find its expression in the abstraction of form and color, that is to say, in the straight line and the clearly defined primary color."
It all boils down to straight lines and primary colors, the signature Mondrian look you see in stores and on runways today. But despite how far Mondrian's style evolved from Dutch landscapes, it's still possible to see connection to his early works.
Although they're completely different, one is figurative, the other is abstract. You see that it's almost the same division of picture planes. And that's not done on purpose, it's done by intuition.
All right. So that's it for this chapter. And we have a sketchbook project related to this chapter, the modern art, which is going to be the last sketchbook project for this course. So as you can see, you're gonna make a transformational self-portrait drawing for the last project. So let's see what it is. So you know, we've learned the history of Western art, and we saw it shows dynamic changes for thousands of years. But when we just highlight centuries, we can simply divide into two big threads of art styles, like representational and non-representational. So representational art is like this Mona Lisa by Leonardo da Vinci's painting. So it is a type of recording in which the scenery information about the physical object is described in a medium. So it is an observational and figurative art. So there are lots of representational self-portrait in this, in the history of Western art. So let me show you examples. So this is a Rembrandt self-portrait painting. And this is a Chuck Close representational self-portrait painting. This is an acrylic painting. It's very realistic. And this is a Frida Kahlo's self-portrait with exotic background. And this is Vincent van Gogh's self-portrait. Now, still the Frida Kahlo's paintings and the Vincent van Gogh's painting is very unique style, but they are made this self-portrait based on the observation. And this is a Salvador Dali's self-portrait. the surrealist artist. So now let's see what the non-representational art. So this types of art is called non-representational art. So there are many styles of non-representational art. So it can be abstract or non-figurative or non-objective or non-realistic or imaginary art styles. So now we're gonna make a transformational self-portrait styles, which means you're gonna make a representational self-portrait, and then you're gonna make a change into a different piece of self-portrait drawing with the non-representational style. So let me show you the non-representational self-portrait styles. So this is Chalk Close Another self-portrait in a non-representational way. He used abstract motifs in to his painting. And this is a very aggressive style of non-representational self-portrait. Can you guess whose self-portrait is?
Pablo Picasso?
Yes, definitely. Yes, it looks like very Cubism style. It is by Pablo Picasso. And this is Basquiat's self-portrait. So we've learned many of modern artists. They already mastered the traditional drawing style like this. In other words, the representational art style. But because of photograph's invention, they abandoned the traditional style and they sought the new style of art like this. These are all the Pablo Picasso's self-portraits. We can see his work change process from the representational to the non-representational. So, this is the timeline we saw in the chapters. So there are many diverse art movement arose after the avant-garde. So we learned before the avant-garde, there are 3 art movements: realism, impressionism, post-impressionism, but still it is just focused on the observational styles. On the other hand, after the avant-garde movement, the art movements were so abstract style, like non-representational style. So like Fauvism, Expressionism, Cubism, Dada, and Surrealism, and Idealism. So now we are going to do the transformational self-portrait drawing based on what we learned in the modern art chapter. So here is the transformational self-portrait drawing process. So step 1, please draw yourself in representational style, or you can just take a picture of yourself as a representational style self-portrait, okay? And step 2, choose one of the modern art style after avant-garde. We just saw 7 art movements after avant-garde, right? So choose one of them. And step 3, please transform your representational style self-portrait drawing or your picture into the non-representational style based on the modern art style you choose on a new sheet of sketchbook. And step 4, please finish the abstract self-portrait and color it. And please submit 2 different styles self-portraits when you submit with the short description and which modern art movement style you apply. But by tonight, you can just show me, just the process. You can just post your picture as a representation or style of self-portrait, or you can just post the second, the non-representational self-portraits process with the which modern art movement you apply in your work of art. So for this project, you will need a sketchbook, pencil, eraser, color medium, any color medium you have, and a camera, like a smartphone. So please post the 2 styles again of your self-portrait. It should be representational and non-representational with the short description. And please write which modern art style you apply into your non-representational self-portrait. So again, there are 7 options: Fauvism, Expressionism, Cubism, Dada, Surrealism, and Idealism. So please choose one of them and apply it into your non-representational self-portrait. So the representational self-portrait styles are so popular. So you can just take a picture of yourself instead of drawing yourself. So I will just show you the abstract self-portrait examples. So this is a Cubism style self-portrait. Also Cubism style, another Cubism style, looks very nice. And another Cubism style. And this one is the Expressionism style, to express the artist feeling into the work. Also Expressionism style. And also this is Expressionism style. And this is a Cubism style self-portrait. And this is definitely Cubism style self-portrait. And this one is kind of mixed with the Cubism and Expressionism. And this one is Fauvism, like a wild beast. And this one is also Fauvism, and absolutely Fauvism style. And this one is Surrealism style. It looks like realistic, but it's not. It's like a dreamlike. And this one is an Expressionism style self-portrait. And another Expressionism style. And this one is a self-portrait, the Surrealism style of self-portrait. And this one is a Dadaism style. And this one is Expressionism style. It looks very nice. And this one is Cubism and Expressionism style. So that's it. So these are all the self-portrait, non-representational self-portrait styles based on the art movement, modern art movement after avant-garde. So, just get some inspiration, how to express yourself with the among the art movement styles. So,
Professor,
yes.
can we use